In this tutorial, we're going to create an advanced set of 18 luminosity masks. To create luminosity masks, we need to go to our channels palette where we'll see RGB, red, green and blue channels. Hold down Control or Command on a Mac and left click on the RGB thumbnail. This will generate a selection just as you saw in the last video. Now go down to the Save Selection as Channel option and click on it. You'll see a new channel appear called Alpha 1. This is your very first luminosity mask, which will target brighter luminosity values. If you find that your luminosity masks look different to mine, that it has become inverted, go to Edit, Undo, and this time go down to the Edit in Quick Selection option and click on that. Make sure you have masked areas selected. Now it should work for you. Next, we must refine this mask to make it more specific. In other words, to make it more targeted towards brighter areas, while restricting darker areas. We do this by multiplying our selection. If you no longer see the marching ants, hold Control or Command and left click on the Alpha 1 thumbnail to regain them. Skip that step if you still see them. Now hold down Shift, Control and Alt, or Shift, Command and Option on a Mac, and left click on the Alpha 1 thumbnail again. You'll see the marching ants change. Again, click on Save Selection as Channel. This will automatically be called Alpha 2. Clicking on Alpha 2, we can see that the mask is generally darker, but the highlights have become brighter. Compared to Alpha 1, this mask would create a finer selection targeting the brighter areas while excluding more of the shadows and midtones. To continue refining our masks, we can do this again. Hold Control and left click on Alpha 2 to make the selection, and now hold down Shift, Control and Alt and left click on Alpha 2 again to multiply it by itself. Our marching ants will change and we can save this selection as Alpha 3. You'll see that each new channel is becoming darker and darker while the highlights are becoming stronger. Each channel as we continue will allow us to hone in more accurately on the brightest parts of our images while excluding darker tones completely. Let's do this 3 more times so that we end up with 6 alpha channels. Now that we've covered our full range of bright channels, it's time to start creating masks that will target the darker areas in our image. To do this, we must press Ctrl and D or Command and D to deselect our selection and return to the RGB channel. Once more, we'll hold Ctrl and left click on the RGB channel to make a selection. This time we need to invert this selection, so go to Select and Inverse. And as before, we'll save the selection as a channel. Now we'll see an inverted mask which has blacked out our highlights while brightening our shadows. This new channel should be called Alpha 7. We're going to refine this mask just as we did with our bright channels. You should still see the marching ants from our new channel. Again, hold down Shift, Control, Alt or Shift, Command and Option and left click on the thumbnail of Alpha 7. Our marching ants will change and we'll save this as a channel. This, just as with the bright channels, has refined our mask, but this time we're targeting our darker areas while removing more and more highlights from the mask. Let's do this just as we did with the brights mask previously until we get to Alpha 12. Now we have masks that cover the entire range of our highlights and shadows, it's time to create masks for our midtones. We've been making more advanced masks by multiplying our selections. This time we'll be subtracting selections. To create midtone masks, we must first go to Select and All, or press Ctrl and A or Command and A. Marching ants will appear around the screen. This means everything in our image has now been selected. Now go down to the Alpha 1 channel, hold Ctrl and Alt or Command and Option on a Mac and left click on the Alpha 1 thumbnail. You've now subtracted the highlighted areas in that channel from our current selection. Now go down to Alpha 7, our first darks mask, and do the same. Ctrl, Alt and left click. This will now subtract all of the highlighted areas in Alpha 7 from our current selection. Now let's save this as a channel. If you see a dialog appear, simply press OK. We now have our first midtone selection. This should be called Alpha 13. If we click on it, you'll see that both the highlights and shadows are dark, while the midtones are more visible. Let's refine this further. Start again by pressing Ctrl and A to select all. Now go to Alpha 2 and subtract this mask by holding Ctrl, Alt, or Command and Option and left-clicking on the Alpha 2 thumbnail. Now do this with Alpha 8 and save the selection. This channel will be Alpha 14. As you can see, we are subtracting a bright channel and the corresponding dark channel. Let's go through the rest now. Finally, now that we have all of our channels created, we can name them appropriately. The bright masks will simply be brights 1 through to bright 6. The darks will be darks 1 to dark 6, and finally the midtones will be midtones 1 to 6. So I'm going to name them now. And that's it. We've now created our full range of luminosity masks. Now I'm going to show you how to install my luminosity mask so you don't have to go through this process each time. Firstly, locate the Actions folder. Inside, you'll see all of the actions that come with this course. Copy them into a folder of your choice, maybe in My Documents, or a special folder you set aside just for actions. Now you can simply double-click on each action file to open them in Photoshop. Or you can go to your Actions dialog and open them up there one by one. If you don't see an Actions dialog, go to Windows and select Actions. Now go to the menu in the top right-hand corner of the Actions dialog and choose Load Actions. Find the actions and press Load. Once you've done that, they'll now be ready to use in your new digital blending workflow. And that's it. With a basic understanding of luminosity masks and with the actions loaded, you're now ready to move on to a more advanced understanding of luminosity masks and how they can fit into your workflow.